the basics of Power and download from internet. Then I will say a few words about the Microsoft Power BI commandlets, which is the components, the library or module that we will use to actually manage the PowerShell in the cloud. And there will be, of course, a lot of demos. This will be a demo-heavy session. So, what is Power BI? If I may quote the official documentation, Power BI, not Power BI, PowerShell, of course. PowerShell is a cross-platform task automation and configuration management framework consisting of a command line and a scripting language. So what does this mean? So you have a language, a scripting language. You can write commands with it and use the command line to execute these commands, and they do actual work. Unlike most other shells like Bash, DOS, or whatever you know, which accepts and return texts and actual texts are passed to the commands, PowerShell is built on top of the .NET COR, and actual objects are accepted and returned by the different commandlets. This is, I would say, fundamental change that first is very performance-friendly, will give you a better performance because you will not need, for example, to serialize and deserialize actual objects to XML or JSON or whatever to pass the data to the next command. You actually give the object itself. Also, all modern version of Windows operating system ship with PowerShell installed, so it's easy to be used. And as I said, it's a cross-platform, so you can install it on your Mac computer or your Linux machine or something and keep using it there too. The easiest way to find PowerShell, for example, is just to type PowerShell on the start menu, and you will see there are a few commands. This one is the PowerShell integrated scripting environment. This is something like integrated development environment or IDE, which you can use to create PowerShell script files, save them as files, stuff like that. While the PowerShell itself, the command line, is this one, which you can use, it's a command line. You can execute commands there just to type, but you cannot save them as a files, for example. And there are also a 32-bit version of these. However, in practice, you should not use them if you are explicitly compatibility issues or something. Just use the 64-bit versions of these. Before we start, I would like also to say something, to make a note that in general, depending on your operating system settings, before using PowerShell as scripting language on this machine to run scripts from files, etc., you may want to change the so-called execution policies. On Windows desktop, usually, by default, running scripts is disabled to avoid unknowingly, accidentally running scripts by the end user because they are not trained administrators, for example. Actually, it's not a security feature because it can be very easily bypassed. Just pass some command line arguments to PowerShell and it will ignore the execution policy. However, by default, to run a script on such a computer, it must be digitally signed, which can cause major inconvenience if you are writing scripts right now. So the best way or the easiest way is just to execute this code. However, it will change the execution policy for the whole computer, not only for your machine, user account. It must be executed as administrator. Just run the command shell as administrator, execute these commands, and you are good to go. So, what is PowerShell? It's a scripting language. This is the integrated development environment, and you have some commands. You can create a new script file here. You can open existing, normal. You can run the whole script with this button, or you can select just some of it and execute it like this. This is similar to Management Studio, for example, where you can execute SQL scripts. So this is one very simple PowerShell script where I can show you the basics of PowerShell. First, the commands here are executed line by line. And to start with the simple things, if we want to add some comments which will be ignored by the scripting engine, but will serve the user that is reading that script, use the sharp symbol, and it will make the rest of the line a comment. So this is a single line comment. If you want to write longer comments on multiple lines, you have to surround them with these couple of symbols. So this is a multi-line comment. This text is ignored by the scripting engine. You can write wherever you want. So PowerShell has commands which are called commandlets, which normally are constructed from two parts. There is a verb, what this command does, and a noun, where it does it, on what it does it. So write host, you can easily understand that will write something to the host, to the screen. So the command write host hello world, as you can see, will write the text hello world here on the screen. So this is the first command that you know. Now you know of PowerShell. Clear host, obviously, will clean the screen. And there are many embedded commands that you can execute. For example, get child item works on any kind of hierarchies and can be used almost anywhere where you have an hierarchy. However, you can use it to get, for example, files and folders on your hard drive. So we'll pass path option and say the path that we want to get the files from. If we execute this, as you can see, we will get a list of files and folders on your C drive. And one thing that PowerShell supports is to attach aliases to these commands because their names can be quite long. So, for example, GCI means get child item. So it is the same thing as the one before. And also, the other purpose of aliases is to assign aliases for these commands that already exist in other environments or the user are some other ways familiar with. So, for example, get child item, if you know DOS or can work in command prompt in Windows, means just the command dir, which will give you the list of files. Next thing that is important when you write scripts and programs in general are so-called variables. Variable is a unit of memory, to say, where you can store values. In PowerShell, you can write declare variables by using the $sign. For example, in Transact SQL, you declare variables in a similar way by using @sign. So this is a variable where we assign some value to it, and for example, we can use it this way, and it will print the value of the variable, and we can also pass the variable to some other commandlets, which will actually give us the same results. Normally, the names of the variables should include only alphanumerical characters, underscore, stuff like that. So all these are valid variable names, and this is a valid PowerShell script. It can be executed. However, if we want to include some strange characters in the name, we have to surround the variable name with the curly braces. This is pretty valid for PowerShell. However, please don't do that only because it can. It doesn't mean that you should do that. And the other thing that I would like to mention is that the variable names and PowerShell in general is not sensitive case. So these two, this is the whole with uppercase, are the same variable. So the next thing about variables that I would like to show, the strings can be surrounded by double quotes or single quotes. So this is one variable, text variable. I'm assigning some value to it. However, see that the name of the variable is mentioned inside the script. So if we surround the text literal with double quotes, it will be parsed by the PowerShell, and as you can see, it will construct the string in a way that the value of this variable is included in the string itself, in the result. If you want to prevent that, because, for example, you want to include the $ in the output, you can surround the text with the single quotes, and in this case, it will not be analyzed by the scripting environment and will be used as is. The variables in PowerShell generally are not typed, and you can hold any type of value inside it. So here, for example, I'm assigning a number to this variable, and it's a number, and then to the same variable, I'm assigning a string, and it works. However, just to let you know, if you want to make a variable explicitly typed, you have to specify the type of this variable surrounded with parentheses here, square brackets. In this case, I will assign an integer value to this variable, and it works. If I try to assign other type of value there, it will try to convert it to an int. In this case, I'm assigning the text to with a number inside it. It will convert it to integer, and it will succeed. However, if I try to assign some other value which cannot be converted to a type of the variable, you will get an error. So this is a string, cannot be converted to int 32. The other important thing about the script in PowerShell is that it has something called pipelines. So you can get the result from one command and pass it to a second command, get the result from there, pass it to a third command, and so on and so on. And as I said, these are not text, these are actual objects, so this is very efficient way of passing data through the commands. So for example, I will execute this command, which will start Notepad. Here it is. And as a demonstration, I will execute the command get process Notepad, which will search to the running process on my computer, find the process called Notepad, and passes to the command stop process, which obviously will find the Notepad command and terminate it. For example, to remind you, the dir command showed the list of files, but this is not the text that represent the files. These are actual objects, so we can access their properties, see the size or the date of this file or folder. One handy command is out null, which you can use to hide the input, the output of some commands. And the other way of passing the data is, for example, I can pass this list of folders to a format table commandlet, which will take the properties name, length, was written time, and format the output as a text table in a pretty way. So This is now actually a text. These are not the objects. So format table returns text, but you can use this command let to, for example, when you write something to files, results from your script. And the result from this table, format table command let, I can pass it to, for example, out file command let, which will save this text to a file. Here it is. And for example, if I run the file, now the file contains what is returned by the previous command let. Using pipelines, you can pass to multiple commands, so the actual line can get pretty long. If you want to split a line at the middle of the commands, use the backtick operator, and this instructs the scripting environment that the command continues on the next line. So this is the same command, but split on multiple lines. The simple variables contain only one value. However, if we want to work with multiple values, arrays are the proper way to do that. How we can define an array with an @ operator and parentheses. So this is an array, which is a list of values, a collection of values, and in this case, it contains the values 1, 2, and 3. And we can also define arrays with more complex objects, actual objects. For example, this is information about countries, and it defines what is the name of the country and what is the capital of this country. So this is how we can define. We are defining an array here and here, and with this syntax, we are defining an object with properties. So this object has properties, names and capital. And when we want to do something with these arrays, usually we can iterate to the different values. We can use loops for that. In PowerShell, you can do it this way for each value in countries. Store the current value in the country variable and do something with it. In this case, I will print a list. The capital of Bulgaria is Sofia, the capital of Romania is Bucharest, and so on. So this is how we can iterate to the variables in arrays. The for each is actually an alias for each object command let. However, if you want to use the command let itself, there is no way to define the name of the current value. So in this case, PowerShell will give you the system variable with name underscore only. So this is actually the same thing, but with using the system name. Similar to variables, to arrays with variables, we can define sequences. So for example, this is a sequence of values from 1 to 5, which we can use also as arrays, for example, to iterate from there. And we can also do it backwards, not from 1 to 5, but from 5 to 1. And for example, here I will do something more complex, getting the current date and adding minus the number of days from this. So we can execute and see that the 5 days ago, the date was October 5th. 4 days ago, it was October 6th, and so on. So we can do some calculations in this way. And also important for being able to write scripts is to know how to conditionally execute code. So you have if operator in this case. However, in contrary, for difference from other shells, it uses this ugly syntax. GT means greater, EQ means equal, and so on. And you can get, for example, here the current month and decide, are we in the second half of the year or the first half of the year? So this is the way how you can conditionally execute. You can use this integrated environment in PowerShell in general to also get help and information about the environment itself. So get command will return you a list of commands that are available to you to be executed from this computer. And because it's a long list, you can specify the name of the command that you are looking for to see is it available, or you can also use the wildcard and search for commands in this system. And if you want to get some information about specific command, for example, how you can use it, what kind of parameters it has, stuff like that, you can use get help commandlet, which will give you some information what parameters this command has, stuff like that. And the last thing that I want to show is how you can extend the list of commands that are available on your computer. This happens with the help of install module commandlet, and you give the name of the module, or this is a kind of package that will be downloaded from the internet, or of course you can install it manually. In this case, this is the name of the Microsoft Power BI management commandlets. Just to note that this command also affects other users because it installs this module for the whole computer, for all users that you're using it. That's why it requires administrative rights. However, if you don't have or don't want to use them, you can install a module for the scope of the current user only by adding this scope current user parameter. And at the end, to be able to use these commands provided within this package, you must import it in your PowerShell scripts. I will not execute this because these are already installed on my computer. So let's continue. This was my quick session about Power BI. It took a bit more than 5 minutes, but I hope you know now the basics and how to write PowerShell scripts. So the next thing is to say a few words about the Power BI management commandlets themselves. So Microsoft provides few packages. This is the name of the package profile, Microsoft Power BI Management Profile, and it gives you these commandlets: connect Power BI service account, disconnect Power BI service account, stuff like that. So these are commands that Microsoft gives you. You can use them to authenticate against Power BI and be able to execute the rest of the scripts. So this is something that you will often use. So there are also commands for workspaces. You can create a new workspace, get information and list of workspaces, add a user to some workspace, give them access, stuff like that. There are similar commands for reports, so you can create new reports, export Power BI reports, work with dashboard styles, stuff like that. Also, there are commands for working with data where you can actually create a data set and programmatically push data to it by adding rows, altering existing data set, adding new columns, stuff like that. There is also some administration utilities mostly related to the encryption keys, stuff like that. And you can also get information about the capacities available in your tenant, stuff like that. However, we are thinking that we are working with PowerShell, but under the hood, this PowerShell calls the Power BI REST API. And because Power BI is very dynamically, we often get new features, monthly releases, stuff like that. It's very active in the development. Not everything is available as a command line commandlets. And sometimes you have to call the API, the REST API underneath by yourself. For example, I will give you this comparison. The admin commands in the PowerShell management commandlets are these. And this is the list of admin commands available in the API. So obviously not everything is included in the commandlets itself. So you have sometimes invoke Power BI REST method commandlet to call the API itself, and I will show that in the demo later. Very few quick notes about some of the most important Power BI management commandlets. So, as I said, Connect Power BI Service Account is used to authenticate you against the Power BI. In practice, you always have to call this, otherwise you will not be able to connect to the API. Disconnect, of course, logs you out. And if you want to call the REST API directly, you will have to use the invoke Power BI REST method commandlet. However, in this case, you have to get the Power BI access token, which is obtained here, to be able to authenticate yourself when calling the Power BI REST method. Actually, it happens automatically, but if you are using invoke REST method, which is the generic PowerShell commandlet for invoking such APIs, you have to get the Power BI access token and pass it to the headers. And if you want to get some more information about the error that happened, you can use this commandlet. For workspaces, you can create new workspace, get information about one or more workspaces that are available, add a user to existing workspace, and remove users. So you can use this for management purposes to automate the rights management of your tenant. With reports, of course, you can create new reports, publish them, get information about existing published reports, delete reports, working with dashboards and tiles, download a report from the tenant as a file. So you can, for example, create a backup of the published reports. And copy Power BI reports will duplicate the report that you passed. However, it duplicates only the report. Both reports will use the same data set underneath, so it will not duplicate the data set. You will end up with one data set used by two reports. Sorry, I clicked incidentally. So about Power BI Management Admin, I will show you how we can use Get Power BI Activity events to get audit information, what happened in your tenant, for example, who created that workspace, stuff like that. So you can create audit logs and store them locally as a files on your computer for reviewing later. And a few words very briefly. I will not show this in the demos, but you can create data set, as I said. You can add data to this data set programmatically. So instead of using some services like Event Hub or something, you can do this programmatically and push automatically data to the data source in Power BI. One quick reminder, because if we want to run scripts automatically, we will have to provide some information about the authentication against Power BI. One way to do that is just to write our credential, username, and password in the script itself. But sometimes we may not want to do that. So in such cases, we can create so-called service principal and give this service principal rights to access some workspaces, for example, and use this combination of application ID and application secret to connect and authenticate against Power BI. So here is the procedure that you have to follow to register such a service principal, which is actually an application. So if you go to Azure portal, Azure Active Directory, here you can find app registrations. You can create a new one here. I already did. And with this application, this is the application ID that you want to know. And here in certificates and secrets, you can create a new secret, which is kind of a password for this application, which you use to authenticate against the Power BI service. Just keep in mind that you have to store this value before leaving the page, otherwise you cannot get what was the value, the original value. Here I can see only the beginning, and there is no way to get this value. The only option I have is to delete it and create a new one. And the other thing that you need when you are authenticating with the service principal is your tenant ID, which you can find from the Azure Active Directory properties. This is your tenant ID. These values are required for you to authenticate as a service principal. So, sorry. The next thing, of course, is the demo. What I will show in the demo, I will show how you can authenticate against Power BI, either by typing it manually, your username and password, or in unattended mode, authenticating with your username and password stored in the script itself. How you can do that with the service principal. And then I will show you some practical examples how you can, for example, download the audit logs from the tenant, get information from the service about what spaces that are available, what reports they have published in, which users has access to them, how you can create new workspaces, upload reports to them, and then I will show you some solutions to real problems by let's say patching credentials when publish new reports, or the password for the data source is changed, how we can change the data source of the existing published report, change the values of the parameters in the service itself, and of course the most important thing, how you can make a backup of the published reports, automatically backup everything that is published there, and in case of disaster or someone accidentally deletes something that is needed, how we can restore that. And one other thing that I will mention a bit later. So let's go back here and start writing actual scripts. The first thing that we need is to authenticate against Power BI. So to be able to use the Power BI management complets, I need to import that module. Then I will authenticate against Power BI. Login Power BI is simpler to remember, which is actually an alias for Connect Power BI Service account, but it's simply shorter. And then I can start using the Power BI management command. Let's, for example, get the list of workspaces that are available to me. So I will here authenticate myself, and hopefully I will get, here is the list of workspaces that I have access to. So we can use this Power BI commandlets this way. However, as I said, if I will have to type my username and password every time when I show you a script, it will not be very convenient. So the easiest way is just to hard code your username and password in the script itself. You can do it in this way. However, if you want, for example, to share these credentials between multiple scripts, and if you change your password, you don't have to go to 20 different scripts and change it again. You can save the username and password in a configuration file. So in your scripts, you just read it from this configuration file. So for example, this is one JSON file. Here is how it could look like. Username, this username, password, this password. So in every script, I will just read the configuration, the username and password from the configuration. There are two different ways to get, for example, the current folder. The PS script root variable is provided by the integrated environment scripting engine to us to give you the root folder, or you can use the my invocation command path, which is the location of the script, not the current folder, but the location of the script. So get content will read the content of the file, and will pass this to convert from JSON. So the config actually is not a text value, but it's actual object. And here I can access the username and password, which are properties of this object, which are read from the configuration file, construct the credentials from this, and authenticate against Power BI using these credentials. And now I can execute the get Power BI workspace again. So hopefully I will get the same result. However, this time, as you notice, I haven't been prompted to provide my username and password. And how we can do that with the service principal? These are the values that I show you in the portal. So you need your tenant ID, your application ID, and the password, the application secret. If you remember, this was the beginning value that I couldn't see there. So again, I'm converting, creating a credential from these values, authenticating against Power BI using these credentials, and I will show you that actually I'm logged out in as a service principal. And for example, it will not find this workspace, but let's say analytics, this workspace. And when executed, we will get the list. Okay. Workspace. Okay, it didn't found that workspace. What was the name? Sales. Okay, sales. Okay, so the sales, there are three reports, get reports that are stored in this workspace. And if I go to my sales workspace, I will see, okay, I'm obviously using the demo tenant. Just to open my scripts. Yeah. So the next thing that we can do is, for example, to get all the workspaces that are available in our tenant. So again, I'm authenticating the same way. However, this command let's provide has parameters. Should it look the scope of the current user, or should it look at the scope of organization? So in this case, Get Power BI Workspace will include all the reports in all the workspaces in my tenant, and all in this case doesn't mean that it should look at all workspaces, but will return all results. Otherwise, it will return only the top 100 results in case there are many. In this case, I will create a text file and start writing data to it. I will iterate through the list of all the workspaces, get the name of the workspace, its ID value and its type. You can see it's is it a group or it is a personal workspace, stuff like that. Get list of users that has access to this workspace and saving their identifier, what access right do they have. Are they admin or contributor or member of this workspace? And is this a user or group or principal? And then I will save the list of reports that are available in this workspace. And of course, I will show you the output saved in this file at the end. So it's now collecting this information, and hopefully in 2 or 3 seconds, we will get that information. Okay, here it is. So we have this workspace. No users has access to it. This is actually a deleted workspace, but it's not touched yet. So we have these reports inside it. Sales workspace. You can see these users has access. This one is an admin. This one is a group. Well, this is a user. And for example, as you can see, workspace. This is personal group. So this is what is my workspace for this user. Only this one has access. And this is the list of all workspaces available for your tenant. Here you can see the my workspaces for the other users that exist in your tenant, stuff like that. So you can use this script to create an inventory of your assets published to the service. How we can create new workspaces? After authenticating, of course, we will create a new workspace. So let's call it this way. Workspace name. I will call the new workspace and provide the name of the workspace, and then I will show some information about the newly created workspace. So hopefully this will create the EE22 workspace. Now if I go here, maybe I'll have to refresh. I will see a new workspace, and here is the ID value of the newly created workspace from our script. However, creating workspaces is not very useful. At least we should add some users to have access to it. For example, here is the same script. It checks, is this workspace with that name exists? If workspace, it will print this workspace already exists. Otherwise, it will create a new one. And what kind of world we live in if Chuck Norris doesn't have admin rights to this workspace? So we will add this user. So this workspace already exists. And now, if we go to access, you can see that along with me, which I created the workspace, Chuck Norris also has admin rights on this workspace. And the next steps, we can, for example, upload a report to this workspace. So I will look at the current folder and open this sales PBIX report. We'll publish it to the service itself. So in this report, I'm using the AdventureWorks database to show some information about the sales of different products and show them on the map. For example, you can see that there are sales in the United States and the United Kingdom of some data. So I will get this report and use new Power BI report, providing the path to it, to upload it to the workspace. This is important in case a report the same name already exists. It will overwrite it. Otherwise, you will get two reports with the same names, which is not very convenient. So this workspace already exists, and this is information about the published data. So now I will be able to see the report has been published to my workspace. So this is the same report as you saw right now. If I try to refresh the data set, usually when you publish reports, you won't be able to do that because there are no credentials provided. However, because I already tried during my tests, it knows the credentials for this data source. But if it's a new report for a new data source, you have to provide the credentials for this data set. So in this case, this is the username and the password that are used by this data source. I will get this workspace that I'm looking for, get the report, actually the data set that I want to patch credentials, and get information about the data source of this report. So this is some code that you don't need to understand exactly. It's a bit more advanced. Here is the name and the password for the account used to authenticate against the data source. So here now I'm patching, invoking the API itself to patch the credentials. And then I will also invoke it again to refresh the data set. So if I run this script now, hopefully it will patch the credentials, which are fine now, and refresh our data set. So if we go back here and see the refresh history, this is the on-demand refresh that I executed manually. This is the automatic refresh, which has been executed right now. So in this case, you know how to change the credentials of the data source automatically. What about changing the data source itself? If you look here, the data source means AdventureWorks LT. I will change this data source to AdventureWorks LT2 on this server. And again, I will patch the credentials. Sorry. Oh, the workspace name is wrong. Again. Hopefully this time it will find the data set, patch the credentials, everything works fine. And now if I go and see, now the data source shows LT2, so the data source is different. And if I go to the workspace, I will be able to refresh the data set. And if I go to the report itself, and now it shows completely different information. My cells are in Bulgaria, in Germany, not in the United States and United Kingdom, as it was before. So this way you can redirect the data from your data source, from the data set to a different data source. Of course, you may need to patch the credentials in this case, but you already know how to do that. In case you have some parameters in your report, for example, this is the same report that I showed you before. However, I added a parameter which is named category, and I am filtering the data set to show only the sales from this product category. As you can see, for example, here the category is only touring bikes. And if I go to our query editor, you can see that I have a parameter named category with this value. And here in category, I have a text filter too. So in this case, I will get the same report. However, I will change the value of the parameter and refresh it. For example, it showed information about touring bikes. Now I will want to show the information about road bikes itself. And also, I will upload this report, not by original name, but will name it differently for every different parameter value. So I can upload the same report multiple times with different names showing different values. For example, you can create reports dedicated for some department and multiply it to show information about other departments. So here now I can see I have one more report, which is sales report for road bikes. And if I show it, I see only road bikes inside it. I can execute it again, this time to show the mountain bikes, and then probably again to show mountain frames, and so on and so on. You can find the use case for this probably. It's very useful. It can change the values of any type of parameters. For example, if you parameterize your data source, you can change the redirect your report this way. So now I will have two more reports showing other information. Mountain frames, for example, here it is. And if you don't believe me, this is road bikes. Few more things to show you. For example, if you want to create a backup of the published assets to the system. For example, I give you here a script to make a backup of one workspace, but you can easily do it to multiple workspaces or workspaces available. It will get this workspace and create a backup in this folder. So it will create there a folder with the current date in this format, iterates through the reports, downloads each of them using the export Power BI reports, and in case of an error, in this script I'm showing you how you can import functions from other file. For example, I have now a file called functions, which has three functions. Two of them are sending emails in plain text or HTML format, and the third one is actually using these send email functions to send me an email with information about the error that happened. So if you run a backup nightly, for example, if something fails, you can get a notification that the actual backup doesn't work, so you can take a look. So this workspace, save it to this folder, and if I run this script, I will go to this folder, which is here, SQLSaturday backup. So it gets a new folder with the current date. Here's the name of the workspace, and it starts downloading files to it. Here it is. And I will also save some information about the users that has access to this workspace. So if you need to recreate the workspace again, you know who needs to add with what kind of permissions, stuff like that. So this is information about the workspace that you just backed up. And so in case you want to recreate it, okay, I want to create a workspace with name New Analytics, take the information from this folder and authenticate, of course, get information about the workspace, create it if it doesn't exist, actually stop working if it already exists, because we don't want to mix new reports and old reports, and get information about the files, get child item with this extension. And for each of these files, I will upload it to the workspace that I just created. So if I run this script again, it will take the files from this folder and publish them to the newly created workspace. However, I will not read the information from the JSON file about the access, because this can be something that you want to do manually. However, if I go now to my workspaces, there must be a newly created workspace, New Analytics, and with all the reports automatically published in. And one last thing to tell you, in case you're authenticating with a service principal in your scripts, for example, you may not be able to refresh a data set because the service principal has no rights to do that, because normally only the dataset owner who published the report can do that. In this case, one thing that you can do is to take over the ownership on this dataset and to give it to the service principal. And with this script, you can do that. So use it whenever you need it. Basically, this was everything that I wanted to show in my presentation. So it's now your turn. In case you have any questions for me, please let me know, ask. I will look at the chat. Is everything clear? Do you have a use case for this type of information that I gave you? Hello?
Hello again.
Now I can hear you.
So here from the track on site, there's nothing as a questions. If the chat, there is no questions.
I don't see anything in the chat either. So obviously, it was very useful information and everything was clear. I hope at least it will be useful for you. So once again, I would like to say thank you to our sponsors. And this was everything from me.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you for your time.
Bye. Enjoy the conference.
Bye. Czemu ci nie znam?
We have been active in the IT space for more than 20 years, even before the IT term even into existence. At Bosch.io, welcome to Bosch.io.
Ние няма да видим, но трябва да се чува там.
Welcome to Bosch.io and Sofia.
Сега е окей.
I'm sure that many of you know the Bosch brand very well, and you have at least one Bosch home appliance or power tool at home. You're also probably driving the car with some of Bosch components.
Трябва да идва от мен, защото през слушалките не го хваща.
What you might not be aware, however, is that Bosch is also a leading provider of IT solutions. We have been active in the IT space for more than 20 years, even before the IT term came into existence. At Bosch.io, we have a very strong focus on delivering the core IT technology, a horizontal platform which serves many domains and many purposes. Based on the platform, our customers can easily connect and control their devices, collect data remotely, perform firmware updates, and remote. We also offer off-the-shelf solutions for specific domains. For example, we make commercial buildings more intelligent with space occupancy tracking, daylight harvesting, lift monitoring, indoor localization, smart evacuation, just to name a few. In the mobility domain, our customers perform remote firmware updates over millions of passenger cars and commercial vehicles across the globe. We have massive experience in smart home development, and our solutions provide the foundation for tens of smart home platforms offered to our customers, such as Miele, Develo, Buschjäger, Deutsche Telekom, Amdocs, or Smart Home, many, many more. We follow a multi-cloud strategy, and we deploy our platform to all the major clouds across the globe. We started with Azure a few years ago due to increasing customer demand. Basically, our customers started migrating their enterprise IT to Azure and expected to have the IT platform deployed there as well. So we listen closely and we followed our customers. The migration trend to public clouds has definitely been strong, and we do expect it to continue. Some of our customers who have high security and confidentiality and legal requirements are opting for private cloud setups, and those who prioritize maximum flexibility and independence prefer a private cloud approach. So for the foreseeable future, we will keep seeing a mixture of deployments, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Specifically for the Eastern and Southeastern Europe, the regional market of IT solutions has not been really impressive. Customers have very high expectations regarding usability and function, but B2C companies have so far failed to deliver something really compelling in a consistent manner. The main obstacle, especially for traditional device manufacturers, is that they're still sticking to the sell and forget model. They do not stay in touch with their customer. They do not provide a continuous value-add service which the customer is ready to do for. In a nutshell, they are falling behind their business transformation, and they have not created new revenue streams. This means that they also cannot cover the operational cost of the new IT use cases. It is somewhat different with the B2B space, where new IT use cases open up new revenue streams more easily. They can also optimize and reduce operational costs for business processes. We see here a lot of potential in commercial and industrial buildings, as well as logistics. Hope to see you soon on the next episode.